Hey everyone, what is up? It's Aime. Welcome back to my channel. I do video essays on the intersection between climate change and social justice, and today I'm going to be doing a reaction video, which I haven't done one of these in a while. I'm not trying to stay away from like politics, but some of these comments can get out of hand, and I love drugs. So today I'm going to be reacting to a video from one of my favorite YouTubers. Her name is Teana, and she posts about like politics, socialism, and a lot of like social issues as well. So I love her video so much. I hope you guys enjoy it, and definitely check her stuff out, especially if you're into like politics and economics and stuff like that, because she does talk a lot about that, and those are two things that I'm really interested in.
Hello everyone, so today's video is going to be about sustainability and how a lot of times no one in their sustainability videos really talk about how people who are low income or poor or people in urban neighborhoods in general can adapt these things without it being completely out of touch. And it just sounds like a white culture thing to do.
Let's talk about it. So this is something where when I first started trying to live a more sustainable lifestyle, when I got into environmentalism, this is 100% something I noticed, but it isn't something that I could put a finger on. But I just remember struggling. Like, I was in college basically. I had started trying to be more sustainable in high school, but it wasn't until I got to college and I was on my own when I was trying to do zero waste and all that. And I just would always struggle so much to not like produce like plastic waste or other kinds of waste. So my dorm freshman year did have composting, so that was something I could pretty easily do, but I just remember struggling so hard. And like looking back to the videos I was watching, no one was talking about how these changes, these lifestyle changes impact people differently based on your background. And so I think it's important for us to be having these kinds of conversations, and for us to kind of get rid of this notion that sustainability looks the same for everyone.
Rather than making this something that indigenous people have been doing and using their stories first and pivoting it to something through the narrative of like black people and how we...
Who is the face of zero waste? I'm going to say it's Lauren Singer. At least when I started living more sustainably, she was one of the people who just basically was at the forefront of the community. And if you look at other like top sustainability or zero waste influencers, most of them are white, most of them are women, most of them are American. Like, this is something that has been kind of co-opted by white women, even though a lot of the things that are like sustainability tips, for example, thrifting, that's something poor people do just because they have to. Or the way our relationship to food, not eating meat, these are things that communities of color just do naturally. But when white people do it, all of a sudden, let's celebrate you for that, when this is something that other communities and other cultures just do.
Even despite how some of us are low income and poor, how we have had sustainable practices, but instead it just turns into this like elite sounding thing, like when you get a little bit more money saying this is what you do, when in reality I think the sustainability conversation needs to be happening with people who look like this from certain communities that I'm similarly from, and have us lead those conversations, or at least use our narrative so it doesn't seem like, oh, the people who are doing sustainability stuff are like these white people who are like vegan and like, you know, have more disposable income, and like, or they talk at people who are not being sustainable, when in reality that group is going to look like a group that does not look like them. I hope I'm making sense. In my
Making perfect sense.
journey of watching sustainable videos, a lot of people talk about like, you know, no waste, fast fashion and whatnot. So there are some videos where I've seen like extreme stuff of like people making their own like compost machine in their backyard because they have a backyard, or some people who go to grocery stores with like all their jars and containers, and they go to grocery stores where you like, or farmers markets where you don't have to buy containers, you can put everything in your own reusable containers, so you're not producing more waste that way. So there's a whole bunch of different sustainable practices that when you look at it, you're like, I can't even do this where I'm from, or I can't even do this.
When I tell you, so right now I'm living in Las Vegas, so I can't drive right now. When I go grocery shopping, my roommate is here. I have to walk, and the closest grocery store is Sprouts, but it's very expensive. It's great for vegans because there's so many vegan options, but it's so expensive, and I can't afford shopping there all the time. And even so, it's about a 25-minute walk there, and I have to carry all the groceries back. Like, I bring my own bags, but I can't carry that much stuff back because it's going to be too heavy, and so I have to take multiple trips throughout the week. So it's just, sometimes people don't understand how someone's specific circumstances impacts how they can or cannot be sustainable. And I just think these are things that we should be talking a little bit more about.
My income
was to install a rainwater barrel. So if you haven't seen that video where we did that, I'll link it right here. It was super fun. But the advanced swap is, yes, to look for ways in your home to start conserving water.
So then there are other websites like Growth Collaborative, which they pissed me off recently because they like charged my card to renew some purchases that I didn't even approve of. But then there are other stuff like Black and Green, and they're Black owned. But yeah, so there's these sites that when you go on there and you want to try to make more sustainable purchases and like renew certain things that you might need, a lot of them can be pretty pricey. So that's one of the things where it's like you have to kind of be going into another lifestyle.
And I feel like when it comes to zero waste and sustainability, these are things where it is an upfront investment. If you buy a reusable water bottle, in the long run, you're going to save so much money versus buying plastic water bottles every week. But if you don't have the money to just put all that money up front into a water bottle, I guess a water bottle is not the best example because they're pretty cheap to begin with, or you could go to Goodwill. But you kind of get the gist, and it does add up. Like, yes, a water bottle might not be that much of an investment up front, but when you look at the list of like zero waste swaps, all of a sudden you're looking at like hundreds of dollars worth of stuff that you have to switch to, and it's not really feasible for everyone, and it's not feasible for everyone to do right away. So maybe you might start with the reusable water bottle, and as you kind of continue, maybe next month you'll invest in a reusable straw, and you'll just go little by little, versus someone who has money and can just straight up get all of the zero waste straws at once because they have the money. So once again, just something where not everyone, I have to go charge this
with more money in order to make some of these changes. So first things first, grocery stores. Many Black people, especially low-income Black people, live in food deserts. So if you live in a food desert, that means that there are not a lot of grocery stores in your neighborhood. So that means like you don't have access to fresh produce. You don't have access to just...
And having access to a car, which is something that a lot of low-income or people living in poverty don't have, makes it even more of a food desert, because even if a grocery store is a 10-minute drive, if that's an hour walk, all of a sudden that's so much longer. And if you have a car, it just makes things so much easier. So having or not having a car makes just things like 10 times harder.
You know, a wealth of food in general. You only have access to maybe corner stores that have like maybe things with like a lot of high fructose corn syrup, a lot of sodium. You may have like not even a lot of restaurants. You just don't have the best options. You probably have a bunch of liquor stores in your community and not grocery stores. So that's what a food desert is like, and it looks different for every area, because if you're in a really dense area, meaning you're in a city area, what is a food desert for you could be a food different for someone who is where you have to drive everywhere. A food desert could look different for that neighborhood. So definitely look into where you're from. You might be living in one, you might not, but still, these are ways where you can check your privilege if you have it. Like me, I do not live in a food desert. I have a grocery store that is like a 5-minute walk this way. I have a grocery store that's 5-minute walk that way, and I have another one that's 5-minute walk that way.
I was living in Paris. I literally had like a similar situation where I had a couple grocery stores within like 5, maybe 10-minute walk, and if I wanted, I could take the metro and go to a grocery store even further away. And I did for like vegan stuff. I would take the metro, I think like 20 minutes or something for like specialty items. And so grocery shopping literally was not an issue. Or if I was coming home from work, there was a grocery store right by the metro stop that I used so I could get stuff and then go home. And it wouldn't be super hard. But living in the US, where in a lot of cities you need to be able to drive to get to most places, like right now, like I mentioned earlier, it's like a 20-minute walk minimum to go to the grocery store. So that's like almost an hour round trip.
And even if I don't want to get to the, I have a corner store in my building that is overpriced. I have a Walgreens by me. I have a 24-hour CVS. Like, where I'm at, like, the area I'm at is like really great for food options. So I'm very blessed for that. When I did live in the Bronx, I'm pretty sure I was in a food desert. When I lived in 165 in college, which was by the Yankee Stadium, we had a C-Town up the block, but then that was pretty much it. We didn't have anything else unless you go to 161, unless you go to Walmart really far away, like in Yonkers or whatever. So that is more of like a food desert where like your options are really not that great and they're few and far in between. You think people are going to be bringing reusable jars and you're gonna have to like advocate for that with your city council member to put that in your community. And in DC, I'm working with a lot of communities who keep fighting for grocery stores in their communities and have yet to have them there. There have been years where there's literally only like 1 or 2 grocery stores within a full district.
Insane, absolutely insane. And you'll see maps of like where the grocery stores are, and it's just like all in the wealthier neighborhoods. And then when you look at a map of where the liquor stores are or where the waste dumps are, it's all the poor neighborhoods. So like it's really flip-flopped and really unfair how much less we think about poor people in the decisions of where we can put these kinds of services, because everybody needs to eat and it shouldn't just be grocery stores in rich neighborhoods. Like, it's just completely unfair.
Disgusting, and it's mainly because of racism, because where the populated black area is, right when you go over west of the river, where all the white people are, there is more grocery stores than you can count. So it's clearly a racism thing that when you are working with sustainability, because sustainability is a good practice and wants to make sure we have a healthy earth by making sure us as humans have better practices. If you want to fight for sustainability, you gotta talk about race first, and if you're gonna be
period. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. So I have a video about environmental racism if you want to learn more about this topic. But when it comes to sustainability, I think oftentimes in the sustainability movement we forget the people, how people are involved, not just in terms of like, oh, we need to make better environmental choices, but also we need to treat our own species equally. Like, we can't advocate for animals and advocate for the environment and not advocate for human beings as well. It's completely twisted that environmentalism is only about the planet. It's also about the people that live on it.
A sustainable person, especially a sustainable white person, you need to be an advocate for racial justice and food equity in communities all over the country. So basically, I've read a little bit about indigenous cultures reusing certain materials in order to make bags for shopping, or like just different ways people repurpose things in order to make that use of that item last longer. So that's in some indigenous communities. And then in black communities, you know how we all save
I
the
left the
plastic
door
bags.
open.
We use the plastic bags, whether it's for our hair, whether it's for going shopping again. So we do those small things, and we of course can do more, but when your pockets are really tight, the last thing you're thinking about is purchasing.
And that's the other thing too, that I don't think I talk too much about this, and I feel like this could be its own dedicated video, but it's the privilege that comes in even having to consider sustainability. Like for example, poor people don't choose to go to a thrift store because it's more sustainable. They do it because that's what they can afford. And there's privilege in someone deciding, oh, I'm going to choose to go to the thrift store rather than buying something that's more expensive that is fast fashion. That is a privilege in you having to make that decision. I watched a video by Tiffany Ferg where she's talking about van life, and how like some people who do van life literally say, oh, I'm not homeless, even though on paper, like, yes, like you don't have a house, you're living in your car, technically you're homeless. But they make that distinction, but they make a distinction between them and homeless people because they say, oh, I choose to live in my car, this is something I want to do, therefore I'm not homeless, I'm just houseless. Whereas other people who might not have a choice and live in their car because that's all they can afford, they don't have that luxury of like deciding to do van life, so they're actually homeless. So I think like there is a privilege in being able to decide and being able to think about these concepts, being able to just take time out of your day to do research. So there is a privilege in even being able to make that decision, and also there's a privilege in being able to take the time out of your day to educate yourself on these things as well. Other people don't have that luxury and have no time on their hands to be like, hey, how can I be more zero waste? So I do think that's a privilege that we should consider more.
Things in advance, or purchasing things like you pay a large amount first for like. So what I was really trying to say is, you know how like if you buy an expensive pair of jeans, but those jeans will last you 10 years, rather than you buying like cheap jeans throughout the 10 years that quantify more than when you would have just bought, you know, expensive jeans that were really long lasting, you know. At the beginning, you would have got your money's worth eventually. So some people can afford to dish out that money to save money in the latter, you know, or buying a bunch of glass mason jars instead of using other like, you know, plastic and non-recyclable products. Like people can't do that. They just got to get the cheap thing quick, and then, you know, they'll figure out how they'll pay for that cheap thing the next time they need it. The next thing I want to talk about is the federal minimum wage. So the federal minimum.
Oh my gosh, she did not go there. This is something I could talk about all day. Okay, so something about the minimum wage that I will never understand, and I pose this question to anyone who's against it, is that what if there was zero minimum wage? Would it be okay for employers to charge someone $2 an hour to flip burgers just because they can? Like, the minimum wage is not a living wage. The minimum wage is not the value of employees. Like, for example, Walmart. So many Walmart employees can barely afford housing, can barely afford food. The minimum wage, even like places like Walmart where the minimum wage, starting wage is like $12.50 or $13 an hour, in a lot of places that's still not enough for you to be able to afford an apartment, for you to be able to afford transportation and food and all that kind of stuff. But the CEO of Walmart is living like a queen. Or I can't remember if it's a guy or a girl. I think it's Alice Walden who's the CEO, or maybe she's just chilling, vibing on the board. We have a situation where the employees create so much value for these companies, but anything that's left over after the wages just goes straight to the top and isn't redistributed for the people who actually did the work. And it's absolutely insane.
Minimum wage hasn't risen in I think about 40 years. Whatever it is, it's 20 to 40 years. It's a long time.
Because it hasn't risen to keep up with inflation, the minimum wage now is actually less than it used to be. And it's going to continue to be worth less because that's how inflation works.
So when a lot of people say, you know, just get that like little small job and you should be able to save up for this and that, no. The federal minimum wage has not been adjusted for the rising cost of what it is to live in this country. So if you live in a place where your minimum wage is $7.25, or even if you live in a place where your minimum wage is $15, that is still not enough. It's a minimum wage.
Exactly, it's not a living wage. The socialism is just oozing off of me. But I just think it's insane that these companies are allowed to... What was that called? It's insane that these companies can extract so much value out of their employees without compensating them for it. I'm going to insert this TikTok if I'm able to find it, where this girl is talking about how she owns a small business, and I think it's like she has less than 25 employees, so it's a really small business, but how profit sharing works in her system. And this is something that could 100% be expanded to bigger companies because they make more money, so they can just basically scale it. That's kind of how it works. And I'm just going to, hopefully I can find this video because it explains it so well, how she, as the CEO of this company, is making the same as everyone else because she works just like everyone else. Like, her input into the company is not worth more than everyone else. And I even understand if she paid herself a little bit more because she did create the business, but CEOs don't pay themselves a little bit more. They pay themselves everything more they pay themselves everything on top of basically their expenses. They pay their employees like the minimum that they're allowed to, or like Amazon increased their minimum wage to like $15 or something. In that case, they pay their employees like the $15, and then everything else Amazon takes home, even though the worth of the employees might be more than just $15 an hour.
You don't get to live the way other people get to with that wage, and everyone deserves to, no matter what job. And especially during a time like this, you know that every single job someone works, no one deserves to be poor when they work a job, period. And then if you've seen that people were able to live on certain wages, people wouldn't do things, you know, outside of the economy or like illegal ways to make money if they could make
a conversation that some of you guys are not ready to have. The way that we criminalize being poor, even though it'd be so much more ethical and so much more efficient to just make sure people aren't poor in the first place, because poor people do crime. It's not that black people do crime, poor people do crime. So if we just decrease poverty and make sure that there's a social safety net, there's going to be less crime. The science speaks for itself. I guess it's social science, so some of you guys aren't going to take it as such, but we need to stop criminalizing being poor.
Livable wage that gave them some dignity and respect, you know, at a job that is legal. But here we are. So these are things that you have to really realize. People who are fighting for sustainability need to fight for a higher livable wage across the country. So another thing that sustainability preaches is that you are going to pay for the true cost of something up front, because we know that if you buy into fast fashion, you're likely buying from a place. If you buy from literally anywhere, whether it's Forever 21, Zara, H&M, like
even like Victoria's Secret, even designer companies still use really bad labor practices. Okay, so I think I'm gonna split this video in two, and in the future I can react to the second part of this video because my camera just shut off. But if you guys want me to react to the second half of this video, let me know. This is basically just me ranting about capitalism for 30 minutes straight. I do enjoy talking about these things. Like I said, these videos tend to be the most hated on the little conservatives on YouTube. So if you could like this video to boost it, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for my patrons for helping me make amazing content. If you want to support me on Patreon, I may post extra videos. I also do behind the scenes. Whenever I'm doing research for a video, I'll just post clips. I'll do like updates, polls, stuff like that. So if you want to join my Patreon, the link is going to be in the description. I'm also going to link my Instagram and my TikTok if you want to follow me on there. That being said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you for being here, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye everyone.